As NBA free agency is underway this Thursday, some big names have opted out of their player options for this season. Also, are the Knicks heading in the right direction to sign Jalen Brunson? Also, what does the Spurs and Hawks trade mean for both teams moving ahead in the future? All that will be covered today on Cooper Sports Podcast. And you are now listening to Cooper Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Cooper Brooks, bringing you the best content from NBA and NFL each episode, wherever you may be listening from Spotify or YouTube. Thank you for listening. And boy, do I have a good one for y'all today. This is going to be a huge episode. We have a lot to get into. Today is the eve before free agency, NBA free agency, where players can sign with new teams or re-sign with the team that they're currently on. Today was the opt-out for, today was the player opt-in or opt-out options for certain players, and we had a couple names come up for that. Also, the Knicks are trying to pursue a certain player in free agency that they want to sign for a mega deal. We'll get into that later. And there's also been another trade that has gone down that is pretty huge for two teams. So without further ado, this is Cooper Sports Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Cooper Brooks. Thank you for listening. Let's get right into it. All right. So as y'all know, June 29th is the deadline for when players can opt in or opt out of their player option for the upcoming 2022 and 2023 season. And a couple of names have come up where the player has opted out. Big names such as James Harden and Bradley Beal. Bobby Portis has come up, Patty Mills has come up, certain different players have come up, but the main ones I want to talk about are Bradley Beal and James Harden. So let's get into this topic first. All right, so reported by Adrian Wojnarowski earlier this afternoon, James Harden will be opting out of his $47 million player option. Bradley Beal will be opting out of his $36 million player option for this upcoming season as well. Both players are seeking new contracts. Woj said that Harden wants to sign a better contract, maybe not a max deal, but work out a contract that keeps him with the Sixers longer. I believe he said that with Beal opting out, he can either sign a max deal with Washington or he can leave and go sign maybe a 4-year deal with another team that'll give him money. So let's start with James Harden first. All right, so as we know, James Harden opted out, seeking for a better contract. This has been a lot of talk for this past since the Sixers got eliminated in May by the Heat in 6. This has been a lot of talks that people have been talking about. Will James Harden opt in on his contract? Will Harden opt out? Will he join a new team? Will James Harden stay? That's a big question we're all wondering, and we'll figure that out tomorrow when NBA free agency is underway. But here's the thing about James. Here's the thing. They were even talking about this when James Harden was traded to the Sixers. They were talking about, will Harden opt in for this next year? We'll see how he plays. So they were talking about that at that time at the deadline. Now we're here. James Harden wants a new contract. All right. So James Harden, this past playoff series, I don't know what happened. This past playoffs year, I don't know what happened. Like, he was performing very well. Okay, well, first, let's get into it. Harden last year with the Brooklyn Nets. He gets traded to the Brooklyn Nets midseason at the trade deadline. He goes to Brooklyn. They make the playoffs. They first round bounce. They bounce the Boston Celtics. They get to Milwaukee. Harden gets hurt, and then he doesn't come back the same with Kevin Durant. James Harden leading up to this has just been crazy. First, Harden wants out of Houston. Harden is not happy with, management, or Harden is just not happy with Houston in general. He doesn't want to be there. He wants to go. He wants to leave. He just doesn't want anything to do with Houston, period. I think he tried to look fat, to make himself look like he wanted to get out of there, which means gaining weight, which means he wanted to get out of there. But then a day later, so he's all skinny and better. But anyway, James Harden didn't want anything to do with Houston. James Harden dreams come true. He gets traded to Brooklyn and plays alongside Kyrie and KD. They get to the playoffs. They win a playoff series together, and then they get to the second round and things go downhill. Kyrie gets hurt. Durant's the only one. And then Harden gets hurt game one against Milwaukee, and then he comes back, but he's not the same player. He's not the same. James Harden in Houston, those were his years. That's when James Harden was James Harden. OKC, I don't remember a lot from OKC, but I do at the same time because I remember watching James Harden a lot when he was in OKC. I've seen clips of it too, and that's how I get it. But James Harden in OKC was good with that big four, I should say, with Ibaka, Durant, Westbrook, and then including Harden. They get to the finals, lose to Miami, and then he gets traded to Houston. All right, Harden gets traded to Houston. Harden's the dude. Harden's the leader. That's his team now, right? Okay. James Harden gets certain players to come in. He gets Howard. He gets Paul, Chris Paul. Dwight Howard, I should say. Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Westbrook, to name a few. Each player that has come in has either all three of those guys, they all left. Okay, it just didn't work out. It was working out well for them, but in the end, they all left. James Harden in Houston, those were his years. Those were his years where he put up big scoring numbers and was a good shooter and a great guy. Like, he was just a good overall player in Houston. Those were his years. He won MVP in 2018, beating LeBron. Those were his days in the NBA. Harden got a lot away with those fouling threes where he'd lean into the player, or he'd try to get a step back three and get a foul off of him. He'd do something to get a foul called on him. He did that a lot. The NBA cracked down on that, and that's where they stepped in and said, no more. Then James Harden's not happy. James Harden gets Dwight Howard, leaves. I think it was Dwight Howard, if I'm not mistaken. Leaves. Chris Paul, they play the Warriors 2 years in a row, I believe. They get bounced in the playoffs. And that's the thing, too. Harden never made it to an NBA Finals or Conference Finals. Well, okay, they did play the Warriors in the Conference Finals, but he never made it to a Finals because of the Golden State Warriors. That was the rival back then. Each time they led the series a couple times, too, and then after that, they just couldn't cap it off. They couldn't finish it. Oh, by the way, in Game 7, they missed 27 threes in a row. Harden, how does your squad miss 27 threes in a row, including you as part of that bunch? How do y'all do that and blow it in a Game 7 to go to the finals? Are you kidding me? So, yeah, those were the days. I remember those days. Those were fun times to watch. Chris Paul gets injured that series, too. Doesn't come back for the rest of the series. He's out. Westbrook comes in. You get to the bubble. Him and Westbrook play. You get to the bubble, doesn't work out, get second round bounced by the Lakers. It's just weird. It's like a chain. Each player that has played with James Harden in Houston just wants out. Like, they either get traded or they just want to get out, I think. So here's where we're at. Here's where we get. Then he gets traded to Brooklyn, as I said. Harden's dealing with injuries during that playoffs against the Bucks. And then what happens this year? He's with Durant. Harden, I guess, doesn't like it in Brooklyn now. You just said last year, though, you weren't happy with Houston. Now you're not happy with Brooklyn. So Harden doesn't want to do anything with Brooklyn anymore. He wants to get traded. People are all the news talking about it. He wants to go to the 76ers. And the 76ers find a way. They punch it. They both get a trade done, sending Ben Simmons and James Harden, a couple of draft picks, and a few players on both sides to both teams. Now this is where we stand. James Harden goes off. James Harden goes off with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, because those first few games, for the first few times when he got to 76ers, they were popping off. I say they were going off, scoring over 30 points a game, demolishing anybody in their way. They were getting it going. And then people were saying Harden and Embiid were the next Kobe and Shaq. Okay, well, win 3 rings in a row, and you tell me if that's the next Kobe and Shaq. But anyway, they were playing great basketball. Harden was hitting all his shots, and Embiid was being a center monster like he always is. And then Tyrese Maxey, being a great role player, stepped up big too. And by the way, this was a huge year for Tyrese Maxey. I believe that this was his year. This was amazing for year for him, for Tyrese Maxey. Then you get to the playoffs, and then you're like, okay, you play the Raptors. You played the Raptors before. This is no Kawhi Leonard. You think it's easy. All right. Well, 4-2. Yeah. Harden, I just this is what I was trying to talk about earlier at the beginning of this episode. James Harden just did not James Harden poor points. Like he did not meet he performed terrible this past playoffs. I saw this box scores and the points in his shooting. His shooting was good with the shooting percentage, but his points at the end were like, wow, dude. Like there were some games where he was not even over 20 points. There were some games where he was under 15 points. I don't think there's one game where he was at least under 10, which is good. But Harden, man, he was not. There was games where even against the Raptors, he was under 10. Or I mean, I'm sorry, not even under 15 or more than not even more than 20. Harden didn't meet expectations this playoffs, and people were also giving him backlash for it. James Harden also against Miami didn't step. I'm sure he stepped. I remember watching it. He stepped up because he knew that Embiid was out for those first two games. He still didn't perform well that playoff series with points. Points were still a low thing. Joel Embiid had to carry the bunch sometimes. Why is it that when Harden gets to the playoffs now, he can't perform well? And I've seen other people talk about how Harden is. Yeah, I've seen how they talk about him. And a lot of the people are right about one thing. James Harden isn't the same as he was in Houston. That's what I'm thinking too. James Harden hasn't performed well since he's been in Houston. If you look back at this past playoffs, his piss poor performance with points, and it's not just the points, but just the way he shot the ball. His field goals were like also terrible. His field goal percentage was not that great in some games. There was a lot where he was able to get over 20 and have a good and still have a bad field goal percentage. But all in all, James Harden was not the player. He hasn't been well, and by the way, because of James Harden, that's why the NBA implied that rule of players can't force a foul in the way that James Harden would do. You know what I'm talking about. I forgot what it's called, but Harden's the reason why that is not there anymore. Harden, in my eyes, is not the same player as he used to be back in Houston. Harden cannot get those foul calls again anymore because the NBA cracked down on it. Harden can, as you saw even this past year when he was first with Brooklyn, this past year before he got traded, he was starting to do that, and NBA refs were like, no, we're not calling that. You can tell that Harden, he's just not there anymore. Like, he may be down the stretch, he could get somewhere. I think he will, but, like, Harden, come on, man. Like, that's not, you can't play like that in the playoffs, especially when you're the second player. And again, regular season Harden, amazing. He gets to the playoffs, not so much performing well. Tyrese Maxey steps up again, plays a good role. Harden's not going to get away with those calls anymore as well. And this is what I'm also trying to get at here. I feel like James Harden will stay with the Sixers only because here's why. I don't think there's any other teams that will go out and get Harden as much as the Sixers want him still. Because if you look at Harden now, like I don't know what it's come down to at this point. But I don't think there's any other teams that are probably gonna get him. Like I don't know where else. I don't know what other system he'd fit in. Because I was thinking, and others too, that Embiid and Harden combo would be good, and I think it is. It was good. It was good for the regular season. But I just don't know where else Harden would fit in. You could go back to Houston. I mean, you and Jalen Green would just be amazing, and Jabari Smith. Like, gosh, that could be good. That could be something. But no, he's not gonna want to go back to Houston. Unless he wants to. But I don't think anybody. I just don't see him fitting anywhere else in his system. You guys might have some ideas where he could, but I was talking to one of my friends a while back. We were saying, do we think Harden's going to leave or do we think Harden's going to go? We were both saying that we don't know where else. At this point in Harden's career, we don't know where he could go at this point. We don't know what system he could fit in. At this point, he could just stay with the Sixers at this point and just get a 4-year 4-year max deal, maybe at the most. But here's also another thing that people were saying: does Harden deserve the max deal? I don't think he does. I think he deserves a 4-year, 3-year maybe, because if he gets that 5-year, he's performing well in the playoffs. He's monstering over everybody. He's performing well. As I said, his field goals and his points were just not there for this playoff series. And I'm not bashing Harden, but I'm just saying, like, dude, come on now. That may be bashing, actually, now that I think about it. But I'm just giving out my opinion what I think of Harden as in that. But I just don't understand. And the Sixers didn't even get past the second round again like they did last year with Ben Simmons and Embiid, which I thought would have happened. That didn't happen. But James Harden is going to get a deal for sure with the Sixers. I know that for sure. I think that he will get a deal with the Sixers, but I don't know how much for though, because I don't know how much they want to give up for him. Because I think you also need to pay Embiid. I think Embiid's not a free agent this year. I think he already got a contract. Yeah, he already did get a contract last year, I believe. But Harden, he's not getting a max deal, I don't think, in my eyes, because Harden needs to perform and excel better. Next year, he can prove that he can get a max. Well, if he signs a 3-year, then he's not getting the max deal, whatnot. But for Harden, I think for Harden to deserve that max deal, he should have stepped up a lot better in the playoffs. And if they went longer, he could have scored a lot better points. But that's my opinion on the Harden part. That's what I think will happen for James Harden heading into free agency tomorrow. Now let's get to Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is a long-time wizard. He arrived in 2011, I believe. It was 2000. If I remember, it was 2012. It was 2012. First year he scores 13.9. Okay. And then each year he progressed well. In 2016, 2017, he averaged 23.1. In his 2018, 2019 year, he averaged 25.6. In his year in 2019 and 2020 year, he averaged 30.5. And his 2020, 2021 year, he averaged 31.3. And this past year, he averaged 23.2. Bradley Beal is an amazing wizard. The brother can ball, like he's just an amazing shooter, and he can score on the inside very well. He's just an amazing shooting guard and shooter overall. I've seen him play. When him and John Wall were duo, I thought that was a great duo. They were amazing. I love their chemistry and their performance. Again, as I bring back to John Wall was averaging bunches of points too when he was in Washington, so you can see that connection. They both excelled well in Washington. So, Bradley Beal opts out of his. Now what? You going to get that max deal and stay a Wizard for life? Or are you going to go sign somewhere else? There's been a few options where Bradley Beal could go. People are saying the Lakers maybe. They can try to get Beal. The Mavs have been up there. I think I've seen a couple people say the Heat maybe. I don't know. But here's what I think. Bradley Beal is probably going to take that extension. I don't think I've seen Bradley Beal give hints, or at this point, I don't think I've seen Beal give any hints or anything saying that he wants to leave the Wizards. I think he wants to stay, but in the past year, last season, the year before this season, he was saying that he didn't want to be there with the Wizards anymore. He was done. He was playing with Westbrook, and he even said, "I'm done. I don't want to be here. I want to trade maybe." And then all of a sudden he starts going off and he wants to stay in Washington. Again, Bradley Beal performs well in Washington. He's an amazing player. You see his points, as I mentioned now, they progress each year with how he plays. And honestly, if I'm Bradley Beal, I'm not going to get to that part. But Bradley Beal has options here. He can either go or he can stay. Bradley Beal signing that 5 years is huge because you can build around him now. I think that you could. Because if Bradley Beal leaves, who's your next up man? I forgot who else is on that roster. Who's it going to be? Porzingis? Man, wouldn't that be something? Porzingis. But no, that's not what I'm talking about here. But yeah, Bradley Beal can get a good contract with him or he can leave. Here's what I think, though. I think the Mavs could go get him. That's what I'm thinking because the Mavs are my favorite team. I think we could get him because we might be losing Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is the player that we'll get into later with the Knicks later in this podcast. But I think he could fit in well with our system if we get him. If we put him at the two with Luka out there, and we already have Dinwiddie, so I think that could work as well. Bradley Bill's young. We can go get some good players, young players too, like Bill. But yeah, that's where I think I stand with Bradley Bill because Bradley Bill's also the shooter that everybody wants, as you can tell. With Bradley Beal opting out, there's a lot of people that are calling for Bradley Beal to come on, let's go. I think Bradley Beal stays in Washington just because of the conditions of it. Like I would want him to come to Dallas, but I also see him staying because he's a longtime Washington guy. I guess he loves being there. You can see it. He performs well. I think he could be a top 10 player in the league at most points if he keeps it up. But I like Bradley Beal. He's a good player. I love seeing him play. That's what I think on Bradley Beal. That was short for Bradley Beal as much as it was for Harden. It's just that I've seen Harden play a lot more than Beal. But again, Beal, amazing guy. But I'm actually, let's not finish with Beal yet. Let's keep going with Beal. You can build around Bradley Beal and get some draft picks, maybe use those draft picks in the future and get some young guys and get around him or trade for somebody. Because if you want to sign Beal, that means, hey, you're the franchise guy. You're staying with us for 5 more years. Or if he goes to another team and he wants to fit in like with Luka and the Mavs, you've seen how the Mavs are. They have young guys and young role players that Luka has developed. Luka can just dribble up to the court, and if he's being double teamed, he can find a wide open man and shoot the three. That's why the Mavs have such a high 3-point percentage rate, I believe, each time in the league is because of that reason. Why they get wide open shots, and their Luka like basically makes it for them. He drives, double team, kicks it out to the corner of the wing, boom, somebody's wide open always. That's what it is. So with Beal, Beal can drive too. Like Beal can drive into the basket. So with Luka being out, if he goes to the bench, then Beal can step up. Or if it's starting, even if Beal's starting for us, he can still put up points and give us good stuff. Which Luka needs more pieces. After that Christian Wood trade, I feel like we still need more pieces to go get somebody big. But we'll talk about the Mavs on another day. But yeah, that's where I stand with Bradley Beal. I think he'll stay. I think that he's committed to Washington because I think that he wants to stay there, I believe. So I think he's committed to Washington. So I think that's where he'll stay. All right, let's get into another player that's on the Mavs that I really like. Somebody that I enjoyed this past year that stepped up real big. That man is Jalen Brunson. So here's where we stand out with New York and Jalen Brunson. So it's been rumored throughout. So when we get to the playoffs, Jalen Brunson steps up huge for us in the first round against Utah because, Luka had that injury before the season. Gosh bless, he came back and we won that series. But he was out for the first 3 games. So who do we look to? We think Dinwiddie's going to step up. Oh, we think Dinwiddie's going to step up. Dinwiddie was in that trade with Porzingis. There's a reason why we got him so that way he can be out there when Luka can be. So Dinwiddie kind of wasn't the guy that stepped up. It was that number 13 kid, Jalen Brunson, who stepped up huge for us and got Dirk's number. He called Dirk's number 41 against the Jazz in Game 2. That was huge. I enjoyed watching that game so much. It was a 1-1 game after that. Jalen Brunson, each year with us in the Dallas Mavericks, has stepped up huge. I remember when he first got here, he's already won 2 national championships before he got here to Dallas with Villanova. Jalen Brunson has been progressing as a young player. At first, I believe he was a good role player, and he stepped up to something where this year he was averaging He stepped up his points, and I believe what I can remember what I wrote down, it was 16 points. It was 16-point games per game this past year. So he stepped up huge. If you could tell in that Utah series, Brunson was cooking everybody. He was sidestepping. He was getting through people. He was moving his way towards the rim. He knocked down big buckets. And that's what I really loved. That's what brought me good energy to that playoff series when Brunson was stepping up. In that Game 3 against Utah, when we went to Utah to go 2-1, Jalen Brunson again, huge, big points. He passed it out to other people. They got huge points. Everybody was just committed to something. But Jalen Brunson was a good role player for us coming up into this. Him with Luka, that was a good team as well. He was a good role player to Luka. I don't know how I should say that as a role player, but he for sure has stepped up. So now here's the thing with the Knicks. As y'all know, with the whole thing with the Knicks don't make the playoffs. They don't know what to do now. They can't think of it's it's just that there's a lot of options for the Knicks. So in the playoffs, even it was talked about Jalen Brunson was going to be a free agent. People were wondering early on where's he going to go? Is Dallas going to give him that contract, or is he going to go somewhere else? So here's what happens: the New York Knicks, and Wojnarowski reported this today. But first, before we get into what Wojnarowski has been reporting about the Knicks and Brunson, the Knicks have traded a lot of picks this past draft. That last week in the draft, they were trading up picks. They were moving people around. They were just doing stuff to clear up ways to get, because it's been in the news that the Knicks are trying to pursue Jalen Brunson. This has been in the news for the past month now that they want Jalen Brunson on their squad. Jalen Brunson, or I'm sorry, the Knicks, and they need to clear up cap space as well. So the Knicks, they cut a couple players like Nerlens Noel, or they don't cut him. They trade him and Alec Burks and a couple of picks, I believe, to the Pistons today. So they clear up cap space. So the Knicks' whole plan right now, Wojnarowski reported that today, that the Knicks are clearing up cap space so that when the day comes for tomorrow, they can go get they can clear up cap space. They're planning to give Brunson a 4-year, $110 million deal, he said. So they're trying to like clear up cap space for him, so that when the time comes for tomorrow, when the time comes and you can sign players, they want to give him that offer. So the Knicks have been the hot spot here, and I was even watching a video on Jalen Brunson earlier today. Jalen Brunson. Uh, Here's the thing: the Knicks want to go after one guy and one guy only right now, and that's Jalen Brunson. They've already cut a couple of guys. They traded a lot away just to they get all this cap money cleared up so that way they can sign one player, and that's Jalen Brunson. New York, here's the thing: if you're just going after one guy for all that cap space, you must be really like all that money just for one guy is Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson, okay, I don't want to talk down bad on Jalen Brunson just because he played with the Mavs and I enjoyed watching him play. Jalen Brunson is not the player yet that's going to be the star player for the team and get you the point. Like, he's not going to be that star player yet. And he's still young. He can develop him to be that star player. But I was watching earlier, people were saying somebody was saying how Jalen Brunson, how the Knicks would just go after this one guy to clear up all that space and give all this money to, when he's not even. Again, don't get me wrong, they probably want to go get him because of the way he can play, and they traded Kemba, so they probably need a point guard position, and the Knicks are still young, so they have a lot to give away and get. And you also saw his playoff performance, so that probably sparked a light in them. And because I think Jalen Brunson's dad is an assistant for the Knicks, so that's also a reason why they want to give him this money so that he can stay with the Knicks for a while. But I'm just thinking, like, why would you want to go after a guy like Brunson, who's just now getting, like, he's not even that guy yet, like that star dude, like that big man. He definitely will be developed 1 year, but he's just, in my eyes, he's still kind of a role player, like a guy that can step up, like how he did in the playoffs, and he did. He showed us, but I don't know why you would want to give him all that money, because the Knicks, they can still go after and get somebody big. They could have tried Kyrie, but that wasn't happening. Kyrie opted in already. But yeah, I mean, Jalen Brunson. Now here's what I think on the Mavs side perspective. I'm fine if we lose Jalen Brunson. It doesn't bother me, because we also had reports. There's also been reports saying that, rumors going around, I should say, that Dragic might be signing with the Mavs. Well, we tried that last time and it didn't work. He signed with Brooklyn, but Honestly, Dragic and Luke. Here's the thing: if we let Brunson walk tomorrow, because he's apparently looking to probably resigning with us or going to a couple other teams. So I think if we let him walk, it's fine because I think we can go get someone big. Nico Harrison has been a big accomplishment for this team since he got here. He's made a huge trades already. So Nico, so with that, and that's why I bring up Bradley Beal earlier, is because Bradley Beal with that system and Luca, they can work good together, and you already have Dinwiddie now and Christian Wood, so that can bring a lot to the team and that can improve it. That's why. So if you let Brunson walk, you can go get somebody else that can bring a lot to your team. And Dragic and Beal could possibly be top two contenders for the Mavs to go sign and play with. Not saying they'll sign them both if Brunson does walk, but I'm just saying that's what I think. But the Knicks are like preparing for this. They're like preparing to say, "Hey, this is what's happening tomorrow. We're gonna offer Jalen Brunson a 4-year deal, and we're gonna see what he does and comes play with New York." Because I guess they want him. The Knicks probably look in his eyes and they think, "Oh yeah, this is the dude we want. This is the guy that's gonna lead our team someplace good, and he's that firepower player." But you need more around him. The Knicks have already shipped off a few people. They got Cam Reddish now that acquired a trade from Atlanta. You got Julius Randle. I don't know what's going to happen to him. You got Emmanuel Quickly. He's still young. You got a lot of players. It's just I don't understand like why Jalen Brunson though. Like why Jalen Brunson? Why JB? Not saying that I don't want him to leave, but I'm just pointing out Jalen Brunson. You don't know how he's going to be though when he gets to New York. Because if the Mavs re-sign him, I'm thinking that if the Mavs re-sign him, he's going to think, yeah, I performed well in the playoffs. I stepped up big. I got this money. I don't have to do anything else. Well, you kind of do to prove that you earn that money. So the Knicks are going to give him that deal because they want to clear up cap space. I don't know. I don't know why out of JB though, but again, that's Jalen Brunson. That's their business to deal with. If the Knicks want him, they want him. I'm fine with it. If he leaves, good. If he stays, great. I don't care. But I love JB. And as far as I could tell, I think they would let him walk, but he could go to another team and develop somewhere else. But I would want him to stay. I want him to stay, but I don't mind if he goes. That's all I'm saying. All right. Got Jalen Brunson knocked out of the way. Let's talk about something else. So, this has been as free agency as NBA opt-in and opt-out has gone out throughout the day. There's just been going around with people opting in and opting out. And then something happens. Something big happens. Adrian Wojnarowski reports that the San Antonio Spurs and Atlanta Hawks have done a trade that the Hawks will trade Daniel Gallardo, I think his name is. They'll trade him and a couple picks for DeJounte Murray and a few first-round picks. I think Atlanta's the one with the picks that they traded. I think it is, or I think it's the Spurs that traded away the picks. But either way, the Spurs just traded away DeJounte Murray, their star player, their star point guard, and they just put him on the Hawks. That's huge. That's a huge trade. That's what I want to get into now. That trade that just went down, I think, works on both levels for both teams, but it just blows my mind because you give away DeJounte Murray, young guy that's your franchise now, that he's your star player, and now what are you going to do with that? What do you got to do now? You got a bunch of young guys, you don't know what to do, role players. But now what do you do? So here's how it works. Here's what I'm going to get into. I think this works for the Hawks because here's the thing. Trae Young, he has all these players around him that can work, that have been around him for a while. Players like Bojan Bogdanovic. I don't want to confuse the one on the Jazz. I forgot how to say both their names, but the Bogdanovic on this squad, on the Hawks, you got John Collins still, and you have Clint Capella and a few other guys. They've been with Trae for a while. They've performed well, but they just haven't been the guys that Trae needs yet. It's like they made the playoffs, but they, like last year, if they picked Trae Young obviously in the draft. They get he gets hit by Dallas, traded for Luka. So Trae Young's your guy. Now what do? You build pieces around him. Well, somebody else has got to be out there for sure to help out Trae. Because I'm not saying these other guys will. John Collins has apparently been in the mix for trades in the past. Like this past couple of weeks, he's been in the trade. He's been in trade rumors. But with the addition trade with DeJounte Murray, I think that helps a lot because now you have two guards, two-way players, I believe. I think two-way. I don't know. DeJounte and Trae, that's huge because now you have two guards that can be out there in the backcourt. You already see how Trae Young develops his own shots in the way that he can play in the backcourt. Now you have DeJounte Murray, who's an excellent young star. Like, that's amazing. That's going to be good chemistry, too. Now you add that, and yet the guys that you have, like Bogdanovich, they thought, okay, maybe that will work. Nah, not really. Collins, yes, but Clint Capella, he stepped up. Clint Capella is a good addition to that squad, but again, you need someone else, I believe. You go get DeJounte Murray. That works out well. There you go. You got your squad. You can go make a run. The Hawks now, they have all these. They're still a young team. I think they're still going to be a play-in team. I don't think they're going to be there yet for contention for a top seed, but they'll be there for a play-in spot or maybe even the 6th seed to get out of the play-in spot. For the Spurs, it's tough because now you got a bunch of young guys you don't know what to do with. Pop, I don't know if he's going to call it. He says that he's already spoken about the trade. I think he liked it. I think he says he doesn't mind working with the young guys. Apparently, there's people are saying that the Spurs might tank just so that way they can get a first-round pick and they can go get a young guys, which is what most teams would do after you just lost your star player. Spurs, don't panic yet because you could probably tank or you can maybe trade somebody that can be your role player. I don't know who you could trade up for. But Daniel Garlio, however you say his name, him going to the Spurs is huge also because he can go and develop his game there, which he's a pretty good player. If you look at Murray's stats, he's also progressed since he's got here to the Spurs, and then now he gets traded. So now him and Trae Young, that's huge now, as I keep mentioning, because again, two backcourt duos, that's amazing. That'll get you something with Trae Young. So now, with that happening, that'll be good. I think that's all that we got today. Yeah, I like the trade, but that's how it worked. But before I get any farther, I think that trade works out for both teams because both teams can do something with that trade and hopefully get it right for both their teams. All right, without further ado, this was 37 minutes, so I think I'm gonna call it. Thank you again for listening. You're listening to Cooper Sports Podcast. Please share this. Please share this with others, friends, family, nephews, uncles, whoever. Thank you for listening. Again, this was a great episode. I think it was great. I got it in 37 minutes. Time is when I'm closing it out, so I think this was a good, longer podcast. Tomorrow's NBA free agency. I'll be getting more into that. I will be bringing guests in soon, so y'all can just don't have to hear me talk. I can bring in a few of my friends or a couple other people, so that way we can talk and have our opinions on stuff. But yeah, any further ado, NBA free agencies tomorrow. I'll get into that tomorrow. We'll be podcasting about that. I'm going to try to bring in more NFL content because I've only had one episode of NFL content, and with 5 episodes, I'm going to bring in more. Plus, the NFL season's coming up with training camp, so we've had a big story so far at the NFL. But anyway, further ado, please share this podcast with others. Please let others know about this. Please follow me on my social media, as y'all know. Again, I'm Cooper Brooks, host of the Cooper Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening.